good, everybody? It's your boy Anonymous, the author, aka Anonymous Rap Guy, and I am back with another little reaction video, man. Today we have something a little different. Y'all know I usually do music video reactions and things of that nature, but today I got some philosophical debates, some philosophical points, and an intellectual speaking, man. So I'm interested to see his point of view. I've been watching a lot of like Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris. A lot of kind of like a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts, to be honest with you, and then I kind of get intrigued from by people through there. I've been watching just a little bit here and there. I'm totally spacing on some of the people that I've been listening to, but just to give you a little bit of background about me before I jump into the video. I am totally into like philosophical debates. I'm really into philosophical points. I like hearing different points of views. I like hearing just intellectual speak in general. Even if you're not an intellectual, I just like to hear people's points of view and opinions. I've always enjoyed that. I love scrolling through comment section, just hearing people's thoughts or reading people's thoughts and watching them argue with other people has always been interesting to me. So before I jump into it, I just want to ask you guys to please hit like, please hit subscribe, leave a little comment, let me know what kind of content you want to see, and I'll definitely make it happen. Naturally, I'm an anarchist, a pessimist, narcissist. Not to get too deep into it, but I don't believe a lot of the things that we do here make a huge bit of difference. If you look back through history, not a lot of things have changed as far as political systems change from place to place, but for the most here in the U.S., it's been the same. Murder rates, warfare, like all that good stuff. You know, I'm really pessimistic. I'm really an anarchist. I do believe that a lot of the things would be better if we stripped it all away. But since it's here, I do identify, just so you guys know, as I do lean on the left, I do identify as a liberal Democrat. I know a lot of people are going to kill me for that, but there are a lot of things that I do enjoy about the rights ideas and ideals. A lot about a couple of Republican, I'll say right-leaning intellectuals that I actually enjoy listening to. I like hearing their point of view. I'm not that familiar with Mr. Thomas Sowell, but I am interested in seeing what he has to say. So let's just jump right into it, man. Let's see what he's talking about. The title of this video is Why Socialism is Very Appealing. Y'all know here in the U.S. we have we're called capitalistic, but we do have a lot of socialism in our economy, just naturally built in. So let's see what he's talking about, man. Let's see if he goes back to Karl Marx. Let's see what he touches on and what his points are. Let go. What'd I say, man?
Not long ago.
Oh, it's okay. He's talking about Karl Marx. I thought it was on socialism.
What view do you regret having held? And you replied that for more than a decade, you had been a serious Marxist.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, as that decade began, I was living in poverty.
How old?
19 years old.
Most people in poverty enjoyed the idea of socialism.
College at that stage? Or
look at the USSR, for example.
I mean, I was out there working in unskilled jobs and trying to make ends meet, living in a rooming house.
Up in you're living in Harlem?
On Harlem.
Right.
I'd heard about Marx, but I finally someplace found that old secondhand set of encyclopedias for $1.19. Which I bought.
I said socialism, not Marxism, by the way.
Article on Karl Marx. It seemed to me that
Don't
he
kill me.
explained these situations so well that.
And the situation was what? That you took the train from Harlem down to the lower end?
No, the other way around. Coming home from work, I would sometimes take the bus, and it would go right up Fifth Avenue, past all these glitzy places, like cross 57th Street, where all the fancy stores were, and Carnegie Hall and the rest of it. And then finally, I got near home, it would turn off this viaduct into 135th Street. And it was that sudden change in the whole scene at that point. And the question was, why?
It's very similar here in Cincinnati. You turn the corner, it's completely different.
One was that no one else had given any explanation. There was no competing explanation that sounded plausible.
In your life so far?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And that's true largely in our colleges, universities today. And the other was that no one had cautioned me.
Why do they jump like that?
It takes an awful lot more knowledge before you can make these kinds of sweeping judgments in any case. But fortunately, I'd been taught earlier to respect facts and so on. And so even during my years as a Marxist, I would read things by people who weren't Marxists. I would read facts and so forth.
But I have heard you say many times that you got a good education in the New York City public schools
Yes.
in Harlem.
Yes.
So they taught you to think. They may
Yes.
not have taught
I'll
you
say
Adam
my
Smith
comments
and
today.
the offensive free markets, but they taught you to think.
Yes.
Quote, again from a person.
You have to be able-
I graduated from
I'll wait
Harvard
till the end.
magna cum laude. Economics and Karl Marx had a lot to do with it.
Wow.
Karl Marx got Tom Sowell through Harvard. Explain yourself. Explain yourself.
Well, I had been taken by the Marxist philosophy, and therefore I had done a lot of studying. I'm one of the few people, I guess, who's read all 3 volumes of Capital and indexed them as I went. And from this, I wrote
This reading takes place before you get to Harvard.
I started, but at Harvard, I went to Capital, and that then provided me with an undergraduate honors thesis, and it's the honors thesis that got the magna cum laude. The grade point average was just enough to make me eligible.
You remain a Marxist at the University of Chicago under the instruction of
Milton Friedman. Yes.
How did that? If Milton couldn't crack you, you were.
I'm not familiar, but rest in peace.
Well, but one summer working for the government as an economist was enough to show me that the government was really not the answer.
Now that I agree with.
Among the people
Government messes up everything.
I was in a program for interns where we saw the top officials of the Labor Department and so forth, and I realized these guys are not going to save us.
In other words, they were not the priestly caste
No.
that you might have been led to expect. They were ordinary chumps bashing their way through life as best they could like anybody else.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I see. All right. And so, but intellectually...
I've worked in the IRS before.
You spend a summer working for the federal government, and that cures you of Marxism.
Yes.
But intellectually, when do you pick up the thread of free markets?
Oh, I guess. Well, I always.
Then you thought back to what Milton had said.
That's right. It's not just Milton, but Hayek and the rest of them.
Okay.
Because I had read all those people while I was still a Marxist.
A couple of you have an essay in here entitled "Marx the Man."
Oh yeah.
Quote: Marx's angry apocalyptic visions existed before he discovered capitalism as the focus of such visions.
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, if you can, the poems he wrote in his teen years. One of them in particular, I remember, went to this effect that then will I walk godlike and triumphant through the ruins of the world. So he has these apocalyptic visions early on before he's ever even thought about capitalism.
I'm personally not that familiar with Karl Marx.
Subtext, as I take it, of your, it's entitled.
I'm familiar with the
not
figurehead,
Marx,
but not the
political
person.
philosopher, not Marx the economist, but Marx the man.
Yes.
And what I felt reading that essay is, you're in effect, it's like the scene in The Wizard of Oz, where they pull back the curtain.
Yes, that's
The
right.
great and powerful Oz turns out to be an ordinary, cranky human being.
Yes.
And what you're saying is Marx is fascinating in some, highly intelligent, and in some cases, in some ways, kind of a nut.
Yes.
Just a man.
Yes.
All right.
No man should be
quotation
worshipped.
from that essay. The members of the Communist League, we're talking now about the mid-19th century, Marx and Engels form, or they participate in the Communist League. The members of the Communist League were overwhelmingly intellectuals and professionals. It had the same kind of social composition that would in later years characterize many radical groups in which the youthful offspring of privilege called themselves the proletariat. Marxism is the conceit of rich kids with fancy educations.
Yes, you see that in these, what is this thing called, the Occupying Wall Street group. All these middle class accents and so on. I mean, how many working class people can afford to take a month off to sit around in parks?
Facts.
And carry on and
Facts.
not have all the electronic equipment with them and all the rest of it. I mean, come on.
Sleeping in sleeping bags with a first-rate down.
It's privilege, man.
So, but at what stage was there a moment when you said, wait a moment, these putative Marxists and leftists and liberals, to use the term the way it's used in this country, as a leftist, they have no knowledge of nor concern for what life is like up on 130th Street.
That's right.
There was a moment, was there a moment or an incident when that just struck you? Or was that kind of a progressive
People
realization?
love to speak about experiences that they are not familiar with.
All right. A recent YouGov survey, the proportion of baby boomers, that's my group, who hold favorable views of communism is just 4%. The proportion of millennials, that's my kids and your grandkids, who hold favorable views of communism is 19%.
Yes.
Roughly 1 in 5 young Americans now holds a favorable view of communism. What do you do with that datum?
Well, I think I get very pessimistic. Socialism has always been a wonderful sounding idea. It's only when you put it into practice that you discover
that it falls apart.
We now have more than half a century of knowledge, of a track record of these kinds of ideas being put into practice in countries around the world and failing time and time again. Not merely failing, but making things worse than they were before. Venezuela is the classic case. And yet, during the whole period when people are starving in Venezuela under socialism, the young people right out of our colleges are flocking to Bernie Sanders because they're judging by his words and how wonderful it sounds, and not by what happens when you try to put those notions into practice, as has been tried again in countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, South America.
Failed everywhere.
To the 1 in 5 young Americans who holds a favorable
Was that
view-
Laura Ingraham? I think that
How can it
was.
be? What's going on?
Failed everywhere.
I think that the education system has a lot to do with that. Back when I was quite young, 20
I was
years
like, that
old,
made me laugh.
I read a book called China Shakes the World about how the communists took over in China. And in the last chapter, he tries to explain it. He says the education system had a lot to do with it. Now, at the time, it struck me as a very odd explanation. Now that I've had a half a century or so in the American education system, it doesn't strike me as odd at all.
The most spectacularly successful political doctrine in the 20th century was Marxism, based on the implicit presumption that differences in wealth were due to capitalists growing rich by keeping the workers poor through exploitation. Now, what was wrong with that assumption?
Well, it sounded good like so many others, but it simply was never put to any test. Now, the test I suggest now is a simple one, but it is a test. And if it's true that the rich are rich because they're keeping the poor poor, then in a country with lots of billionaires, usually correspondingly have great amounts of poor people. But if you compare the actual data, there are more billionaires in the United States than in Africa and the Middle East put together. And yet the standard of living of the poor in the United States is higher than that
than
of people
anywhere else.
in Africa and the Middle East. So by that simple standard, it just doesn't hold up.
There are problems with the theory.
Pretty cool talking points, man. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he said, but it's really cool to hear his points. Obviously, Marxism fell apart. It did not. A lot of people disagree. A lot of people agree with socialism, Marxism. I obviously feel that, especially here in the U.S., there's always going to be a happy medium. I mean, that's just how America works. Is there's always going to be a push and pull between the left and the right, trying to get what they want to be passed and trying to make sure that what the other side doesn't want to get passed. It's been going here like that since slavery, man. I mean, it's just how it works. Unfortunately, it's always just been a game of trying to get your side to win and trying to get the other side to lose. I mean, it's a shame. I wish that we could actually have a healthy debate about what's good and what isn't for the American people, but it's just not going to happen. Like I said, I do lean left, but I do see a lot of ideals on the right. I do see a lot of conservative ideas. I consider myself rather conservative when it comes to like foreign policy. But that's a conversation for another day, man. Like I say, I just love hearing intellectuals speak. He definitely touched on a couple of things. I personally do not like when people or intellectuals go on these daytime TV shows, whether it be Fox or MSNBC or CNN. I hate how they give them like 10 minutes to talk, and then they whittle that down to like a 3-4 minute clips, and then you have to kind of summarize who they are based off this. I much prefer open dialogue to where they can explain themselves, to where the interviewer can ask them questions to poke and prod to get them to expand on their ideals. Absolutely, I love that. And going back to the beginning when I said listen to a couple people, like I said, I'll listen to pretty much anybody. I've read like 1 or 2 Michael Eric Dyson books, but the books that I read were not necessarily macro. It was very micro about the Bill Cosby situation, which he didn't really. The specifics that he had did not expand upon wider ideals. It was really just specific to African Americans and the community, and I am pro-African American. I mean, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I am African American, and I'm always going to be pro-African American. So yeah, it just is what it is. So yeah, I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Please be kind, please be dope, but more importantly than anything else, man, be yourself. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace. Hey guys, thanks for checking me out today. Before you leave, check out the Patreon. I got a link down in the description. Please subscribe and leave a comment to let me know how I can make my content better, or any kind of content that you guys want to see. Click like so YouTube can know that I'm a pretty dope reactor, and leave any thoughts that you guys have. Some time with me today, guys. Peace.
And I just really want the simple life. Simple cars, simple charm, that's a simple right. No sitting large, just want a simple slice.